living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
With Pam and John. This SPEDTalk.
Welcome to SPED Talk with Pam,
and John,
also known as The Calm.
before the storm.
Our purpose is to elevate the conversation and amplify special education resources.
And our why is all about the kids. You know, Pam, there are so many organizations and people around Texas who are just making it happen for kids with disabilities.
So let's make this a platform to celebrate their efforts, because special education is about making the impossible possible.
Pam's pointing at me.
All
I
right,
think
John.
that means we're live.
We are live, John.
Well, Pam, here we are, Austin, Texas. It seems like we keep meeting like this.
I know, John. We need to stop.
Well, I think we need to do it more often.
Okay.
So, guys, we have a treat for everybody today. We're down in Austin, and Pam and Amy, everybody, Amy's with us.
Hello.
Amy's our producer of SPED Talk, but we have the honor of being here at TCASE offices in Austin, and we have a room full of people. So, Pam, who's in the room?
I don't know who's in the room, so let them introduce themselves. Who's in the room?
Good morning, I'm Ginger Meyners. I'm the Associate Director for TCASE.
And I'm Theresa Parsons. I'm the Executive Director of TCASE.
And I'm Kristin McGuire. I'm the Director of Governmental Relations here at TCASE.
And I'm John, also known as the Storm. No. And Amy's giggling. So,
Okay.
guys, we are here today for a reason, and that is really to elevate the work of TCASE and to honor, I think, the contribution of these ladies, but their whole team. TCASE is really our professional organization for special ed administrators in Texas, and an organization I've been part of for many years, and really one of my favorite, if not the favorite organization I have in Texas, because of the positive slant that they take on advocacy, on engagement, and really just on elevating kind of the work of our educators across the state. So we're just excited to be here today. Thank y'all for taking time out of your schedule to let us, hang out with you for a little bit.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of visitors, so it's a treat.
Well, we may change that.
Yes.
Or you might just lock the door once we leave.
We love visitors.
So, Theresa, could you tell us the vision of TCASE?
Sure. Well, I think it's very much summed up in our mission statement, which is to inspire and empower special education professionals. Been with the organization for about 22 years. And one thing that's consistent is that our members are looking for information to help them do their job better. They're looking for a network to call upon. And we recognize that we don't own the organization. This isn't our organization. We execute what our members want. It's a very member-driven organization. We have a very active board. We have a phenomenal House of Delegates, and so many people who volunteer to make this organization what it is.
So who are the House of Delegates?
Each region has their own way of selecting a person to represent the region, and they meet on a periodic basis, and one of their charges is to elect our board. It's a very important charge. And we have conversations about what's going on out in the field in the regions, and so they're a very important part of the conversation, and we need someone to talk to about what's going on in each region.
So these are individuals who have worked in special education out in the field
Yes.
over their careers and have now elevated to the level of being considered regionally for these positions.
And they have that, like I said, big job of electing the board.
Yeah.
The board is elected at large, and all of our board and House of Delegates is made up of professionals in the field, administrator members.
That's awesome. Very much so. I know there's a lot going on in Austin right now, the 86th legislature going on. And I know TCASE is actively involved at the legislative level. You shared a great document regarding, I think maybe the vision or the ideas for reform for special ed finance earlier this year. I would love for you guys to elaborate on that, on what you believe some changes that could be made to that funding rubric, the weighted allotment piece that is really kind of antiquated, but also just where you are in the process right now.
Right. It's been an interesting session. It started out you know, a lot of us in the field were very motivated that, okay, that they're saying this is the session we're going to reform finance and, you know, the year of the teacher or the session of the teacher. It sort of evolved into a whole lot of hurry up and wait, and it's still there, even though we only have about 4 days left. But we, Disability Rights Texas and TCASE decided to partner in the interim, even before the session started, to really take a look at special education funding, knowing that, you know, this has been brought up, you know, obviously for several years. And we've just talked about how our particular state system right now and how we fund special education is very outdated. Those particular, you know, weights and the instructional arrangements are from 1992. They haven't changed in terms of the actual weights applied. And, you know, bottom line is what we've argued, especially because the Public School Finance Commission was charged in the interim to really talk about all forms of funding and what could be changed. We really wanted to take some initiative, and especially, you know, with an organization that we don't always, you know, have the same, you know, points of view, or we don't always engage with, but we all could agree that the funding is, you know, we don't have enough funding, it's inappropriate, and it's outdated. And so we really started looking at how that could really be reformed. And what our platform was and still is to change our funding system and change it based on the needs of the student, rather than where they're receiving the instruction, it's what they're receiving.
Right.
And, you know, our argument to, or I guess I think what legislators typically understand the most is just examples of a student that's in a mainstream setting. If you're in a general education classroom, you can have very minimal needs, or you can have, you know, pretty significant needs, you know, possibly even a one-on-one with that student and modified curriculum.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, our state funds those students the same way.
Right.
And so that's, you know, the examples that seem to resonate with, you know, some of the lawmakers are those particular examples, but that's not all of it. But we got quite a bit of traction and support. At the end of the day, the Finance Commission did make a note in their report that said special education funding needs to be looked at, and it needs to be an ongoing project, but they declined to actually put some meat behind it. So we continued during the session to advocate for funding reform. And I believe, I'm very hopeful that come Monday at the end of this regular session, we'll at least have accomplished a couple of things. One of those is we were able to at least get a funding increase for the mainstream instructional arrangement. Currently it's at 1.1, and we were able to negotiate at least a 1.15. So we at least got that. I think we're safe on that. It's not over till it's over. And then I believe also in House Bill 3, which is the significant education reform bill, we're hoping that ultimately there will be an advisory committee formed going into this interim session that will eventually produce a report on special education funding reform options. So somewhat similar to the Finance Commission, but specifically focused on special education.
Sure. You know, it's hopeful. It's very hopeful, because, you know, change is difficult, and this level of change, the complexities that go into special ed funding, you know, it is something that really perplexes a lot of people that are out doing the work. You know, it is a very misunderstood funding equation, and antiquated in its age. These weights were set back in the early 90s, but I think that, to me, I'm so excited to hear that they've put a note in and said, hey, this needs to be addressed, and that, you know, and I think
any movement in the right direction.
That's right.
That's great.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, and a 1.5, if we get that on the mainstream funding, that's a win as well. I mean, for our schools, that can really generate additional revenues. You know, it sounds like in your recommendation to really tie this to services versus setting, you know, that is so in alignment with, you know, inclusive practices, because I have worked with so many passionate educators that are working so difficultly every day to meet the needs of kids, regardless of where they sit. But funding is assigned to the seats that they're sitting in. And so we keep trying to separate and try to redefine this thing that is special ed.
Right.
We keep trying to get to the back of that definition and say, hey, this is not a place, right? This is a provision of services that follow that child throughout their settings. But as long as funding is tied to a seat they sit in a room, and as long as I think our committee meetings then determine what seat that is or isn't based on our interpreted needs of that child, in some ways that is counter to that inclusive movement.
It's a
So,
philosophical
yeah.
decision.
It's
Yeah.
a philosoph-
Statement.
Absolutely. And that's really what I think kind of triggered the partnership with Disability Rights Texas for this particular reform idea is, obviously they are going to advocate for inclusive practices and they want that just as much as we do to the maximum extent appropriate.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. If it's funded to the seat and to the actual room that they're receiving the service, it's not appropriate. It's not enough.
Okay, I just want to switch subject just a little bit. So, working with special ed directors, what do you think are the challenges that are facing? We've talked about funding. Are there any additional challenges?
Staffing.
I was going to say
Staffing.
staff.
I mean, that's what we hear. I'm sure you hear it too. There just are not enough people out there in the pipeline. And it's going to continue to be a problem, no matter how much money we throw at that, profession, until we get more people trained in special education and as diagnosticians, as teachers. I think there's still going to be a struggle.
And I think support too, that they feel supported, because I think a lot of people feel like they're doing a lot and doing everything they can to serve the students, but there's just not a lot of support behind them.
Okay. I've worked a lot in the past with SSA special ed directors, and I would say that those probably are my love because the work that they do.
So unique.
Yes, and also how somewhat the disconnect between each campus or each district, and then trying to make these systems work when, as you said, the support may not be there. So, what would you say to SSA director to encourage them? Especially somebody who's new into the field. I'm not quite sure what I want to ask, so I'm kind of rambling here. What would you say to an SSA director who's just trying to figure out, is it really worth it to stay in a field where you're working with so many different personalities for your superintendents, but yet you still have the responsibilities that TA put on you?
I think for us, just to
Save me,
give,
thank you.
to weigh in, like that's the perfect example of why TCASE exists.
Right.
So I think from that perspective is, we thrive on our members making connections with each other because we are the only ones that will keep us in this.
Yes.
We don't get, our members don't get the attention and recognition that they deserve. It's very easy to just give up and say, why am I doing this? Especially in the last few years.
They're not doing it for the power and the money.
Yeah, not the power and the money.
That's why
we know that. Right.
We don't want them to, just survive their job. We
Right.
want them to thrive.
That's
and,
right.
and to do that, they have to be connected.
Yes.
They have to know each other. They have to be talking.
Yes.
There's a lot that we can provide because they can't be at the legislature and they, we synthesize the information. But at the end of the day, the value of TCASE membership is about each other.
Yeah.
It's about having that connection and knowing who to call upon.
That's right.
And we've had in recent years a group of SSA directors that took it upon themselves to begin creating more of a sense of community under the umbrella, which is great. We've had pre-conferences and breakfasts, and we have, not many people know about it yet, but we do have a community in our TCASE Connect for SSA directors. We hope to build some other communities like that for the different segments of our membership, because that's important for them to be always finding like-minded people
Absolutely.
who are going through the same things. I want to plug our TCASE Connect. I think that it's
Yes,
going to be a
please
great
do.
platform. And I want more people to think to what tools they might have that they can upload into the library that someone else, even if one other person benefits from what they can upload. I don't care if that upload is coming from a service center, an SSA director, a single member district. It could be coming from a diagnostician.
Yes.
It really doesn't matter. I think that so many people have a tool that someone else might glean something from. And I encourage people just to share. So
Yeah, I love that TCASE is doing that. The member community thing I think it's been a success. Like more and more I see familiar faces popping up on the board, asking questions, getting responses, sharing resources. I think that we're hungry for that. I really believe, that special ed, like you said, is one of those areas that it's not, it's so easy to say, we're devalued. It's just an afterthought, right? And so because of that, we have a lot of passionate, professional, knowledgeable people out there that are just hungry and they're taxed, right? So Texas is such, I always say, such an amazing state. It is, you don't go to Ohio or nothing bad about Ohio. I don't want to and say like, oh, are you really? So in Ohio, do they say proud to be from Ohio? We're Ohioan proud. Or,
everybody does.
Okay.
I think everybody does. But I think there is a certain sense of pride here in Texas.
Yeah.
When I moved here at 29, and one of the reasons I moved here was it felt like Ohio to me.
Yeah. Okay.
People talk to each other. They look at each other in the eyes. I came from DC, but that's where I lived between.
Yeah.
And DC is wonderful, but people don't look at each other in the eyes as much. They don't have that personal connection.
Right.
People don't seek that network the same way. It's more of a professional network rather than a personal connection. I think that really hit me hard when I came to Texas, that the people within this organization, they become lifelong friends.
Yes.
They become family. They invite each other to major life events.
Yes.
They celebrate together. And I think that's something that we take a lot of pride in the office.
Absolutely.
That we have that connection with some of our members, and that you're always meeting somebody new that you find you have a personal connection with. And you can see it. There's something when you walk into our events. We are so proud when we put the event together and we invite people under the tent, and you look around the room and you look at people, really feeling their buckets filled by each other.
Absolutely.
There's something special about that.
Yeah, there is. And you have amazing exhibitors, you have amazing presenters. I mean, TCASE is one of the conferences I come to each year, and I always feel like, you take things away from it. You take ideas away from it. A lot of times there's resources that are shared. It's very application based. And I think the farther you get away from the classroom as an educator, you get disconnected sometimes to those resources, those applications, and how you can have real impact in the classroom. And to me, it's always felt like TCASE has kind of got their finger on that. It's like, how can we impact our administrators, impact our extended community in a way that they can take that back and have an impact in a child's life. And so that's really powerful.
And were it not for such a member-driven community,
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
it's the members that make that possible.
Yeah, we, every committee that we have, they feed the content for the convention, and Ginger can speak to that. I mean, we have these meetings where members are telling us exactly what we need right now. And that's where we built that space for that crowdsource session, because we realized that what might be really hot and important today, in 2 months or 3 months when the convention's ready to happen, the dynamic might have completely changed. And there's a new subject that we haven't left space for.
Right.
And our members are really great about helping us pull that together at the last minute. So it's everything is member driven.
Yes, absolutely.
That was, as Kristin questioned, as far as the legislature, you've talked about the funding bill. Have you seen any other bills that you think will have an impact on special education?
I think, most directly, there are some that will specifically target students with disabilities. One of those is Representative Bernal's bill, House Bill 165, that will allow students in special education programs to receive an endorsement, even with modified curriculum. So, right now the commissioner rules prohibit that, but the Senate actually just passed the House's side of that bill. So that looks like, unless the governor vetoes it for some reason, that should be going into effect this coming year for 1920. So that's just essentially an ARD committee would just decide if the content and curriculum is rigorous enough and the student could be awarded an endorsement. So I'd say that's definitely something of benefit, to our group.
And an issue that members brought forward.
Yes.
Right. Right. And I think there was a lot of talk initially about, STAR assessment, accelerated instruction, the SSI, potential to repeal. That kind of died down in terms of the 5th and 8th grade promotion requirements. That's still going to be the case unless something gets thrown in at the last minute. But there are quite a few curriculum-related bills that, of course, will affect students with disabilities and their programming and classroom supports. But I think ultimately the funding was the biggest issue. I expected a lot more with dyslexia, but we ultimately I think what we'll end up with is, again, if House Bill 3 does get through, both chambers agreed to a dyslexia allotment. The House was a little bit lower than the Senate's version. But I do think that will go into effect. And so that is an allotment that will be in place, whether or not the student is also in special education. So
That's huge.
You could get both of those funding allotments. There's also a bill that would add in more of the audit and monitoring piece or ability to TEA to audit based on dyslexia screenings and the dyslexia identification. And so that, of course, is going to be a crucial thing to communicate. Some of our members are directly involved in evaluation and services for students identified with dyslexia. Some are kind of on the periphery of that concept. So that will definitely be one we've got to look at. But it's there are a lot left. And we have, just a couple of days. So we'll see what ultimately goes through. They're kind of running at sprint pace now. So a lot of things are getting put through. I also think that the mental health bills, there's two pretty significant ones, House Bill 18 and 19, that will, definitely impact our services as well. So we'll just have to see what happens with those.
I know there was a bill, a transition bill. I don't know the number, with the Representative Zaffarini, that disability right I call it the continuous transition bill. They just keep adding on.
Yes. I was like, were we not done with this last
Exactly. It was like,
Well, you never stop transitioning.
no, it's not. It's not that we never stop transitioning. That's not the issue.
Right.
It's just what was being asked.
Right.
I was just kind of wondering where that one is, because I don't.
That one did not move.
Thank you.
So,
Because there was not that it was the intent was not bad,
Right.
but what was being asked of school districts
Right.
would be almost impossible. Just
Right.
coming from my background is transition.
Right.
So, and asking all districts to implement it. It was just been hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I had several conversations with that organization, especially to say, this is great. This is an ideal wording here, but, let me tell you our experience.
Right.
And I just said, so much of the time you don't get people coming to ARD meetings. You invite, you never hear back. You try to work with these agencies. So, but it didn't move. So.
Yeah, mandating things that are sometimes out of our control creates problems for our schools.
Right.
And so I think that
Which the
might have been-
legislature is fond of doing.
Yes.
So.
And so many times these bills sound like really great ideas.
Sure they do.
But they
In
have
a
no
perfect
idea
world.
the implementation considerations.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's why we need a presence at the Capitol. That's
Absolutely.
why it's so important, because we know that you don't have time.
Yeah.
We know our members do not have time
Yeah.
to monitor these things.
Well, I think that really does touch on, though, we each have a responsibility, and I think in society, we each have a responsibility in education. And I think we're starting to see an awareness in educators that their voices matter, and that we need to look to our organizations and we need to inform our organizations, but we also need to find our voices. And, we want children who are self-determined, and our adults in the system have to be self-determined as well. And so I love seeing that we have more educators out at the polls. We have more educators voting. I know Raise Your Hand Texas. I've talked to some people over there that are, really kind of, I think, trying to move some things in some good directions. And so, it's just wonderful that special education right now at least is getting the attention that could result in change, because without the attention, nothing will change. So the conversations are being had.
And while our efforts are so important, and especially the communication back to our members about what to do, we've heard from lawmakers specifically saying, these legislative issues are determined at the ballot box. What we do in the legislative process is important. We find things out.
Yeah.
A lot of things can happen. But if you're not electing the right people, there's only so much we can do.
Right.
If those lawmakers are not seeing educators vote, then they don't care what you have to say. You're not going to vote.
Yeah.
You're not going to matter. So make sure you matter.
And I know I've heard people, far more important people than me, talk at levels recently about how, part of the reason we're having these conversations is because that, educators have shown up and need to continue to show up if we want to continue to elevate these topics and this type of change into our system.
Absolutely.
Is that, our educators have to continue to have a voice.
And they feel it.
Yeah.
The legislature feels it now, and they, it's up to us to take that power back. I
Yes.
think we've been waiting so long for the recognition that's deserved. We need to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
If they vote, Kristin will have more power when she goes to talk to them. It's that simple.
That's it.
They will listen to what she has to say.
Yeah.
If they know that the educators are voting.
Yeah.
So I want to play a little game with you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. I didn't tell John I was going to play
She didn't
today.
prep me. So this could go really bad. Really good.
Yeah, we might be editing.
I thought she was the
So
caller.
yeah, hey, hold up, wait a minute. Now, Pam, you're kind of weaving into my lane over here.
I know.
And I'm not big on lanes because I'm all over the place. But first off, I just want to say one thing before you take over this show here.
Okay.
First off, a minute ago, you were rambling and stuff. You were going on about your business. And I'm like, wait, I'm the rambler. She's over there rambling. Now I'm over here sitting and minding my P's and Q's. But no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, John.
Bring
Thank you.
it, Pam.
But people say, Pam, can you? Anyway, we're not even going to go there. Okay, so let's just go with my one. So for your members, and I want each one of you to answer. For your members, if you had one word for them, what would that word be?
Heroes.
Oh, that's a good one.
See, I go first. See,
Yeah, very good.
I jump in first and then there.
And it makes it hard for us. Boy, that's tough. I'm not sure why solidarity comes to mind.
Okay.
Because, if we're not going to get anything done if we don't do it together. If working with disability rights has moved some things for us, and we never know who our next partner is going to be. But within our organization, we have to be all on the same side working together. Solidarity.
Good word.
Okay, I have two. I always have to
I
do
love
two.
it.
Yes.
I got
Always. So my first one was encouragement, just because I just want our members to know that we're here for them, and they encourage us so much by what they do every day. And then celebrate the wins, and we celebrate them because, just celebrate.
Every day.
Celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I go?
Go ahead, John.
Come on, Pam.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
so I've been working on this triadic theory in my head lately
Okay,
about.
one word, John.
Well, so I'm gonna do 3 words, but that's okay. So but it's just one for each of me. Okay,
Okay.
me, myself, and I. So me, my word is passion, because I think that educators, there's not an educator in the field that did not go into education because of a passion that they have. The other thing is strength. I think that our educators are probably our strongest members of society. And I think it's important they remember to tie back to those strengths and connect kids to their strengths, right? We don't live in a deficit universe, right? We live in a positive universe, a positive world. And so we've got to connect people to their strengths. So this is only 2. So now I still get to say mine, right? Because I've done me and myself.
Go ahead, John.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So connectivity.
Yeah.
When we feel threatened, we look inward, we turn inward. Special ed is a difficult area of education. It's not for the faint of heart. It is really it's sometimes rough, and we have to connect with each other within our systems and outside of ourselves, because push back against that tendency to disconnect when we feel threatened.
Real
We-
connections.
We have to make real connections. Yeah. So this is fun. Yeah.
So I want to have some more words because everybody else got to.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna come back. We'll come right back to that.
So we'll circle back.
And I'll give you my word, and Theresa, you can go
Okay,
ahead with more words.
So Pam, what is your word?
I can tell you.
We're waiting.
Are you recording?
Yeah, Pam, we're always recording.
Oh
What
gosh,
are you
I didn't
talking
realize
about,
we were
girl?
still recording. So my word would be possibilities,
Oh, nice.
because I think we enter special education, especially once you've been in it over 3 or 4 years, and you realize all the possibilities
Yes.
that what you can do for kids, with kids, for parents, and it becomes, this is possible. Things that we thought were impossible become possible.
Absolutely.
And so all the possibilities, instead of looking at, we've been talking about the negatives, that we don't focus on the negatives, we look at the positives.
Yeah.
And then we ask, why not? How can we? And who do we need to move to make this happen?
Yes.
So possibilities.
And
I
those
love that one.
conversations, I love listening to those at our events because they're happening
Yes.
in the hallways, in the exhibit hall, in the classrooms, in the meeting rooms. So
I'm going to jump in and say courageous. I just have to put my word in.
Amy, I love that.
Yeah.
So,
I think we have to have courage. You
Yes.
can't be in a position in special education and not have courage to do the right thing, and to do the right thing is always the hardest thing. To do right by a child when the system doesn't necessarily see it as you do, or to do right by a family when, maybe it's hard to do so, or, so I love that courage.
I just think that our kids, our educators, everyone kind of is in this vulnerable state, and it takes courage to step forward, to even do what you're doing, Kristin, to be at the legislature, and
it takes a lot of courage.
It just takes a lot of courage, and to step outside of yourself for the greater good, and I just think that's awesome. So thank you.
Well, thank y'all. What you do every day.
Exactly.
Okay, what was your word
What-
again,
So-
Theresa?
Well, the first one, well, that doesn't matter.
Well, I was writing them down because I'm going to post them.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
The two that I wanted to throw out take us full circle back to the mission.
Yeah.
And we didn't in the office come up with our mission statement. We didn't have some expert come up with that. That was a board-driven activity.
Mm.
It was something that was done over some time. I think that they hit on 2 words that are very important: inspire and empower.
Mhm.
And those were chosen because not only were they looking to inspire and empower their professionals that work with them, but the directors were thinking about the organization and its role,
Yes.
and what collectively we do for each other every day. And I'm not talking about the staff. I'm talking
Yeah.
about our members when they come together in
Yes.
whatever format. They are inspiring and empowering each other.
Absolutely.
That is their mission. So.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And I think that is like to embody that, really, that is the goal, is to somehow really realize that mission every day in our work. And I think that if we can't model that, and if we can't do that, then how do we expect our teachers and our, and so it goes all the way to the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And think about how much knowledge you have to share. Going back to your point earlier about, how part of this effort is to share with each other and share all these resources and our TCASE Connect app. I mean, there's so much collective
There
knowledge in the state on, best practices, and, the agency and the Department of Education. Everybody's always saying, well, what are the best practices? What's working? What's working?
Yes.
And we've got to be part of that to say, well, we already know,
Right.
I've got something over here,
Right.
I may be a little shy and may not want to share it, so
Right.
publicly, but we've got to find ways to, like Theresa said, empower each other to say, this is working, try it out. Don't be afraid
That's
of,
right.
of doing stuff like that.
It sometimes makes me sick when we have to send those, I hate to say the word rejection, but to tell people that have proposed sessions that we just don't have the space and time.
Yeah.
Because we have so many good proposals.
Yeah.
So many great ideas for things that people are doing and using that we don't have that people don't have the time to stay for a 5-day conference. So we've got to make
Yeah.
tough choices. We've got to find more ways to get the word out about what great things are happening in districts.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I love about the interactive is having that another venue with just a slight twist, and because the Great Ideas has been a staple for so many years. How long has Great Ideas been a conference in Texas?
It's been called different things, but I think almost as long as the organization existed. 60 years
Wow.
is we're going to be celebrating 60 years in February.
So Pam, you probably remember the first one.
Oh.
No, I mean, because you've been around. I mean, you've been doing this stuff, right? I mean, I've only got 20-something years in, but
Yeah,
Pam has
go
been-
ahead.
Dig himself out.
Wow.
Wow,
So
that was
anyway.
real. That one hurt. What? I got no words. No, John, I don't remember the first one. Actually, I probably was born.
But the first one, and some people know the story, but it was born out of CEC. There was a CEC conference, and the directors that went began having a small meeting off to the side. And in 1959, 1960, and I think it was in Caldwell, Texas, they decided they were going to form a little organization. And in those early days, it was TEA presenting. And that was really the meeting, TEA presenting, and not a lot of necessarily opportunities for collaboration, but out of it, the organization was born. And
did
it
not know.
took most of those years, TCASE was not affiliated with the national case up until a handful of years ago.
Wow.
So it took off, and it had a steady growth throughout those years. I know I came to the organization in 97, and it was about that time that we had tremendous growth, attributable to a lot of things, but it started just as a small meeting within CEC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine the reauthorization of IDEA and with No Child Left Behind. I bet that really catapulted.
Absolutely.
Of course, I didn't pay as close attention to it at that time, but that's.
And there was a
I see you
time
smiling at me, Pam. I'm sorry.
probably around the late 90s or 2000 that we started having these new director pre-conferences.
Yes.
And you'd look in the audience, and it was intended for a handful of real new directors. And you'd look in the audience and see 30-year veterans.
Yes.
And we recognized that, that needed to tell us something about our programming, that there were some things that would always be new.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
There will always be new directors, but there will always be veterans who have new things they need to learn.
That's right.
Or
And
sharpen their skills.
Yes.
Yeah, I
just
love
do a
that.
refresh.
Yeah, when our veteran directors show up and they just really want to continue to learn, and I think most of them do. They just they want to continue to be relevant and know that they're keeping up with all these changes. I mean, special ed is ever changing. And through whether it's through court cases and through application of amendments but that's super powerful.
What's even more powerful is when we look for people to present on certain things or to get involved in a committee, we very rarely hear no.
Yes.
Nobody says
my
no.
gosh.
Yeah.
And, we're in the association space. We know a lot of association people who work with different types of members, bankers, lawyers, plumbers, you name it. And, universally, we feel like the stories that we have versus some of the experiences that they have, we're in the right place. We want to stay here
Absolutely.
because our members have something special to bring. They're so volunteer minded,
Service oriented.
Yes.
Service oriented.
Yeah.
and feel such a sense of community that makes our job a little easier.
Yeah.
We don't have to create that. We don't have to artificially make people talk to each other.
Right.
It's not, that's not our challenge. So,
One question. So for parents, because sometimes, you all do get a bad rap. Especially in my past life, because I've had many lives.
Yeah.
So you just know, I was the state lead for parent coordination. And so I worked across the state with different parent organizations and advocacy groups. And, sometimes it would be TCASE was the negative.
Mhm.
And so for parents and parent organizations, what would you want them really to know about this organization as being supportive of students with disabilities?
I think there's so many things, and I'm sure Kristin can chime in because she does work with a lot of those organizations a lot. I think what people need to understand is, I have a nephew with Down syndrome. I grew up with him. I was 11 when he was born. That's part of the reason I'm in this.
Yeah.
I think if you look around our membership, you will find most of our members have a very personal connection to someone with a disability. There's a reason they got in this field.
Yeah.
And contrary to popular belief, it's not because of the fame or the money or the power.
Yeah.
There's a personal connection there, and there's a reason that person wants to serve students with disabilities.
Yes.
And we can't forget that. They're
Yeah.
driven by their hearts, and I hope the parents understand that.
And I think given the last few years and then, the big Department of Education citation and everything, I think that's, although no one would ever wish that upon any state or anybody, I think that it has triggered more of those connections with the other organizations.
Yes.
With disability rights, with parent to parent, with just different Texans for Special Education Reform. So we've really tried to find common ground and say, we all want the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We all want these students to be successful. We want our students to live productive, healthy lives, and we want to be a part of that. And so I think we've really tried to find that common ground. And I think that for parents to remember that exactly what Theresa said, it's personal.
Yeah.
It's personal. Where, our special ed directors are there for the right reasons. It's not that fame and fortune. They're there because it's personal and they want to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I know one of our goals really is, obviously we're trying to elevate the conversation and we're trying to, amplify resources out to people and get them in the hands of people who can use them. But organizations are entities, right? They don't have faces. They don't have, hearts. They don't, but organizations, are really just people. And the goal for us has always been to humanize the organization, to humanize the people that we are coming in contact with, because in doing so, hopefully, when something comes about, when we need to reach out, or when there is conflict, we remember, this is a human. This person has their reasons, their needs, just like me. And together there's a solution. We are really, all of us, wanting what's best for kids and what's best for students with disabilities and what's best for schools and and so I love that, from maybe some people perceive a negative in the findings from the Department of Ed is all these possibilities, and so Pam, do you have any more questions?
No, John, I do not.
I just want to make sure, because sometimes I cut us too quick. And we are just so thankful, just filled with gratitude and blessings for TCASE and really for this opportunity. We're kind of living out a passion of ours, which is to connect and to elevate and to kind of stay in the positive and celebrate this work. And you guys taking time out of your schedules, as busy as it is, to make time for us is just such an honor today.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, this has truly been a gift for us as well, just to, have this conversation and this opportunity with you all, because we appreciate so much what you all are doing as well. So.
Yeah, we're serving the same people. We all have the same mission. So it's great to be under the tent with you.
No, thank you. So I think that's it for us.
I guess that's it for this episode of SPED Talk. This was a special one, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you at Interactive.
To continue to elevate the conversation, hit us up on Twitter at SPEDTalk 2020, where you can find links to all of our episodes and each of the resources that we discussed today.
John, also links to the resources will be available at our podcast site.
And if you found these resources helpful, be sure to share them with a friend, because information should always flow through us, not to us.
That will do it for this episode of SPED Talk.
And remember, courage creates culture and kindness keeps us connected.
Until the next time, I'm Pam,
And I've been John.
and this is
SPED Talk.
Elevate the genre.
Living in the moment, and the moment is the future.
Speaking with Pam and